Well, ladies and gentlemen, I can say with absolute confidence I watched a good episode of animated television today. Or tonight, as I'm saying this. Or morning, as I'm recording this. Here's the short and sweet. It was a good episode. Like, it was legitimately entertaining. Like, I had no issues with it overall. I mean, there were a few things in there I didn't like, or there was really one thing I didn't like, but it was like one minor thing that I could kind of live with. Everything else, good. So, you know, so let's go through the episode actually, because I'm actually excited to talk about this. Like, that's actually amazing to me. Perry decides to get, it starts off with like, still doing the Superman hunt or whatever, and Lois doesn't believe Superman because he didn't answer any of her questions, and so she's looking to tabloids for like information to see, well, we got to find something out about Superman. There is one big moment that kind of had it was a giant F up by Clark towards the end, or at the very end, is so when he's looking through the tabloids, right? No, actually, you know what? Scratch that. First, Perry decides to give the trio, a legitimate shot at being reporters. He asks them to go to like this party or something hosted by like this bachelor named something Ivo. That's the one thing I don't like, is who I think this is. But we'll get to that when we get to it. So they go to this party, or rather, they meet up, and this is when Clark, when he's picking up, I think Jimmy knocks down some of the tabloids, or some of the magazines or whatever, and in there is a story saying the Flying Boy of Kansas or whatever. And it's, let's just say Clark reacts, his reaction was not exactly pleasant, because he's like, oh no, let me remove this because I'm gonna be fucked over if they find this. He removes it. They go to the party. And the one thing I will say is, if you like these two, Lois and Clark, and I've said this before, the one thing I've liked consistently through this show so far is their dynamic. And if you really like them together, you'll really like this episode. And that was really the big chunk of the interactions in this episode, was Clark and Lois, and it worked. It was fine, it was good, and I enjoyed it. Now, the main villain for the episode is Ivo. Now, I don't know why they turned. Okay, this is my problem. This is the only problem I have with the show, is the villain. Now, this is maybe like a, just like a character thing where they combined Ivo and Parasite. Now, maybe I don't know this, or maybe I'm missing something, but I distinctly remember Professor Ivo and Parasite being two separate villains. Yet in this episode, they're the same, right? Because like I said, Ivo is basically like a young and hip like bachelor. Like, it's weird, but whatever, And then he creates a suit out of like alien tech, I'm assuming, or whatever it is that like he stole from like Inner Gang. And I mean, like I said, this episode, it was just basically lots of Clark and Lois. Clark finding the tabloid, ripping that piece out, putting it in his pocket, and then Clark beats Parasite with a little bit of help from Lois and Jimmy. Right? They set up Jimmy. Jimmy had an item that they needed to be able to figure out how to turn off something, and it wasn't stupid or contrived. Right? It was shown before, so it wasn't totally unexpected. And then, they turned it off, and Superman beats the Parasite. Then he shares a good moment, like an actually good moment with Lois at the end, where I think well, you know what? If it wasn't for the final kind of like minute, I would have said they're probably a thing. We have to wait to see next week what happens, because, so they have a moment, and she kind of said, oh, this was a date, basically. And, so I bet you Tumblr will go off. And you know what? This is one time I'm like, let Tumblr have their moment, right? Then comes the giant revelation at the end. As I said last in my last video, Lois finds out. She puts the pieces together because she's not a fucking idiot. And because and Clark had put his jacket with the crumpled up piece of paper from that tabloid, and he gave her the coat to wear because she lost her sweater or whatever she was wearing. She was still wearing something underneath, so don't get your hopes up. I know this is on Adult Swim, but it ain't like that one, boys. And so you go and so she takes it out, uncrumples it, and puts it in there, and she kind of looks at it and goes, wait a minute. And then she has flashes to from Clark to Superman, and she kind of realizes they're one and the same, and says Clark is Superman and does not have the happiest look on her face. I will say that much. So overall, I really enjoyed the episode, and like I said, this was kind of not so much focused on the villain. It was a little bit, but most of the focus was on Lois and Clark because it's going to set up obviously the inevitable kind of situation that's going to unfold in the next episode. But I'm assuming that it resolves, but we'll have to wait and see. Um, that's all I have to say. I liked it. This was probably easily the best episode so far of the series. Whether or not it'll get any better than this, we will see. But I liked it, and I'm glad this was definitely an improvement over last week. Anyway, folks, I'm going to call it here because, again, nice, short, and sweet because there really isn't much to say in the sense of like terrible or anything. And I'm looking forward to the next episode. Like, I can actually say that and go, I'm actually looking forward to it. Anyway, folks, let me know what you think down below in the comments. I'm actually really curious to see if, like, maybe I'm, like, giving the show too much credit, or maybe I'm not alone. Who knows? Anyway, if you like the video, please click that thumbs up because it definitely helps. And subscribe. I'm glad I have 12. I'm like, holy shit, I have 12 subscribers. I'm actually kind of impressed with myself. But I'll be seeing you guys next week. Hopefully it'll be good. Hopefully.